Hello, everybody. Justin with the Light and Darkness here, talking today about endurance in the faith. Going to be telling a personal story of mine that had to do with a lot of pain and suffering, but also God's providence at work in my life. To start off, it was about, really honestly, at the beginning of my wife and I's marriage. Shortly after we got married, I found out that I had a tumor in my right testicle and found out that I had testicular cancer for the first time. This was a heck of a way to start our marriage. I kind of joke around with her all the time and tell her, she got the lucky dog type of husband because she has been in and out of the hospital with me a lot. And moving on from that, about 2 years later, where the more serious time came into play, this was a time that was really scary for me and my family. I don't really talk about it a whole lot because I don't really like to draw attention to something that I felt like wasn't as bad as what others had have gone through. So today is really the first day that I'm going to open up to you guys about the things that me and my family had to endure, but also the way that God truly did show us that He is the one who provides for us in this life. Starting off, I would just like to say that without God, none of this would have been possible. Without the friends and the family that I met through our church and also having in life, none of this would have been possible. So I would just like to preface that by saying that about the wonderful people, too many to thank, that helped take care of my family, and not only take care of my family physically, but also take care of my family emotionally. To begin, it started off 2 years after the first time that I had cancer. There was no chemo. The doctor just removed my right testicle and chose to not do chemotherapy. And about 2 years later, I had started rapidly losing weight. I thought it was because of the new job that I had as a FedEx driver, and I had been there for a few years. So I was thinking to myself, of course I would lose some weight. I'm sweating. I'm running a whole lot more. Little did I know that is a common symptom of having cancer. So I move on from there, and I slowly start to notice different things like back pain and stuff like that. And my wife starts to notice bruising in my body. And we kind of brushed it off a little bit, just thinking maybe I was getting hurt at work and stuff like that. And this is kind of the part where something really crazy comes in, because at the time, unfortunately, I have to admit I was a very angry man, and didn't really treat those around me the way they should have been treated. So in this time, I was praying to the Lord to help me to change my heart and to change the desires of my heart so that I would choose to love first and not always be accusatory or always look for the type of answer that seemed right for me and always thinking that my way was the right way. This was something that I did constantly, something that my wife had to deal with nonstop, unfortunately. And she was able to be a stay-at-home mom at this time because of the job that I was able to get. And that blessed me. It blessed our family. It gave us a lot of freedom where my wife was able to be with our kids a lot, and our kids got to know their mommy very well in the beginning stages of their lives. This was a blessing for me, but also growing tired with work and being very busy at work caused me to be a very irritable man. And this allowed a lot of strife in my life for me personally, and something that I unfortunately put on everyone else that was around me. And I was really honestly very prideful and very selfish with my time. And this is not the mark of a good Christian father or husband. And I know that now. Luckily, I can say that I'm mostly on the other side of that. There are a few times here and there where I'll have a little spurt of anger. And it's really just because I'm being a sniffling little baby sometimes. And the old me tries to creep back in. And I have to beat him down with a hammer and get him out of there. But all that to say, you know, I started really going on this journey of understanding, like, at the time I was listening to a lot of secular music. I was allowing a lot of secularism come into my life and take over the things that I wanted to keep for God. Um, I wanted to give God my mind. I wanted him to have my attention. I wanted him to have all of me. And at the time, I was choosing not to give that to him. I was choosing actually to use my time for what I wanted. Like I said, I was a very selfish person. And for me, like being alone in a truck all day, you got headphones in. So I was nonstop listening to things that did not lift me up. It actually tore me down a lot and put me into a horrible state of mind a lot. And slowly I started to notice, and the Spirit started to work on me and show me how a lot of the times the things that influence you in your life are the things that you're clinging to. So, the whole story of like if you put a rotten apple in a bucket full of good apples, the rest of the apples are going to go bad. So if you're feeding yourself rottenness, that's what you're going to get out. And God started really working on my heart with this. He helped me to lean on him a lot more in that time and tear into my Bible. And as I felt my body start to change, I started praying to him like, oh my gosh, like I feel like you're going to let me die in some way. Like, how some people just have that feeling like, man, I feel like I'm really close to death. Um, or like you feel like death is knocking on your door. I don't know if any of you guys ever feel that way, but in that moment in time, I actually had multiple conversations with my wife where I was telling her, and to say this is before I was diagnosed the second time, so I was just feeling off. I just felt weird, like something big was coming, like a big change was coming in my life, and it definitely did. I was not ready for what God had in store for me at the time. And my kids, this is the craziest thing. My kids started to like for some like somehow leave little hints for me. Like I guess God was really working through my children and he was having them to pretty much tell me like, dude, you got cancer again. And I don't know how to explain it other than just to tell you the things that they did. Um, you know, in this moment in time, since I had already had cancer before, after you have cancer, if you speak to any kind of cancer patient, they will tell you anytime your body feels off, anytime you feel a little fatigued, or any kind of symptom that would show up with having cancer, you immediately get into your head and you say, yeah, I've got it again. It's happening. Like, you don't trust that you're ever in the clear ever again. It's a scary thing. It's emotional. Um, and at this time, like I said, I felt like a shift was coming, like some kind of big change was coming in my life where I didn't really understand what to ask for. In that moment in time, I was also, like I said, a very angry man, someone who could not hold back his temper. Um, wasn't very physically abusive, but very verbally abusive sometimes. Um, which I say wasn't very physically abusive. I didn't abuse my wife. I didn't really abuse my kids at all. Like, I would yell, unfortunately, which I have been definitely showed how that is abusive. So I understand now, like, how emotionally draining that could be for those who are around someone who has a very major issue with their temper. I would just like to say, in this moment, I started to pray prayers like, God, if this is something that I'm never going to get rid of, take me. Because I was tired of hurting the people that were around me. I I didn't want to hurt them anymore. So, and some people might sit here and be like, well, that's very suicidal. I wasn't wanting to kill myself. I just was kind of giving it up to God and saying, look, if this is something that I can't get rid of, please just take me. Don't allow me to continue to be this way. Um, and what really struck me is now, a few years past that, I'm understanding like I wasn't really surrendering to Jesus and giving him the authority to take those things out of my life. I was just asking him to stop it. Not for his benefit, but for my benefit. And my perspective has definitely changed now, where I understand that it's always something that you should do for his benefit, for his namesake, for his glory. You should change, and not for the things that will pass away. Do it for the thing that is eternal. And now I know I'm talking about my wife and children, but Jesus Christ is paramount. So I should want to change first to glorify him. So now that I'm on the other side of it, I understand that. But at the time, I truly was just so wrapped up in my own head that I would not see it that way. So I started praying prayers like that, and started praying to God and saying, like, what is happening to me? At the time I was reading through the Proverbs, a lot of those Proverbs seemed to be speaking directly to me and about me, all of the ones that had to do with the wicked man. And it broke my heart, really, because I was like, oh my gosh, how could you ever say that you love me, God? How could my wife ever say that she loves me and want to stay with me if the Bible says I'm wicked? Like, above all. Because a man that cannot, hold his temper is an abomination. Like, we're supposed to be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to anger. And that did not describe me back in the day. Back in the day, I say that, and it's like it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But 4 years ago, when I was really bad, 3 years ago is when I finally found out I had cancer. I'm about 2 years and 8 months actually away from it now. And I started also praying, like, God, if I do have it again, like, sometimes we do those things with God where we're like, make this happen if you're really trying to speak to me. And I did that, I was like, you know, I'll try anything but have to go to the doctor, because at the time I didn't have health insurance. So everything I did had to be self-pay. Um, and I didn't really have the money to go and get scans all the time like I was supposed to. So we just put it off. And I didn't want to go to the doctor. So I was like, God, you just tell me so that I don't have to go to the doctor until I know that I have it. And I prayed a prayer that was so silly. I was like, God, like, if I do have cancer again, have my wife wake up in the morning and talk to me about a dog that she dreamed about. And man, like, woke up the next morning, went to work, nothing ever happened. She never said anything to me, and I was like, man, maybe I don't. Like, maybe we're in the clear. And I even called her because I was like, I'm not waiting anymore. I have to call her. Called her. Did you by chance have a dream about a dog last night? And she was like, no, I didn't. Like, why are you asking? I was like, no reason. I just was wondering. And then I get home, and at the time, my daughter Willow was like 2 years old. Um, and she all of a sudden looks at me and she tells me, Daddy, like in her baby voice, like, God's getting mad. And I was like, what? It sounded like in her baby voice, like, doggy's getting mad, like doggy. The dog is mad. And I was like, dog is mad? And she just kept repeating herself, God get mad. God get mad. I was like, God's mad? I was like, did you see him? Did you see God? Because I like to open up, like, to my kids and let them just express themselves and speak the way that you know, they feel emotionally about God and about their dreams that they have and about the feelings that they have for Him. Um, and I was like, "Did you see him?" And she said, "Yeah." And I was like, "God? And he's getting mad?" And she was like, "Yes, Daddy." I was like, "Oh my goodness, like, what could that possibly mean?" Not even a week later, my oldest daughter comes into the kitchen and she's like kind of crying. Um, and Savannah, my wife, is like, "What's going on? Like, why are you crying?" She was like, "I had a bad dream." Um, and my wife was like, "What was your dream about?" And she was like, "That Papa and Daddy died and went to heaven." And this was close to about a year before her dad passed away. And I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" And she was like, "Yeah, like, and I had just told her about my biological dad. Um, Not my stepdad that I've talked about, but my actual dad, who had passed away and who she wasn't going to get to meet, because he had already died. Our kids were introduced to death very quickly in their lives. We try to make it somewhat of a normal thing, not something that is to be feared, because as Christians, we should not fear death because death cannot defeat us. There is no defeat in death for a Christian. So we're raising our kids to feel that same way, and they have no fear of death, really. They are excited to go see Jesus in heaven. Um, they do get sad to think about like leaving their family members and stuff like that. They understand grief already, and they're not very old. But she told us that, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, like what's going on?" And this was shortly after I prayed that prayer. So I really felt like God was like, "Oh, you want to tell me how to tell you, but I'm going to use your children. So then you're not going to know for sure." Come to find out, I started bruising really bad. Because with cancer, your red blood cell count gets really low, um, along with your white blood cell count. They start to deplete and they don't renew themselves easily. So then you bruise, and the bruise actually holds much longer than it usually would for anybody else. And my wife started to notice this and got very scared and worried. And we eventually found a hospital in Tennessee that would allow us to get a discounted rate for a CT scan. So we went to Tennessee one weekend after I got off of work, made a little day out of it, went and, had pizza at a really nice restaurant, went and got our CT scan done, and just left Tennessee and came back home. And a little more than maybe 3 weeks later, uh, actually, it might have actually been only 3 days later. Yeah, I think it was only 3 days later. They finally read the CT scan, got the results, and all of a sudden, because my wife is amazing and likes to stay on top of things, she is like got my chart set up. I think it's called my chart. Yeah. Where you can log in and get medical records as soon as they come out. And I had it as well because I was like, I'll try and figure out first, so then maybe I can go and tell her myself instead of her having to break down on her own, depending on if it came in when I was at work or something. I didn't want that to happen. And we're sitting at home. We had just had dinner. It was like 10:30 at night. And all of a sudden, me and her both got a text message on our phones. And it was our medical records to pull it up. And yes, I had two lymph nodes that were cancerous, that had swelled to about, I think they said 5 centimeters, uh, or 5 millimeters, not milliliters, that's liquid, 5 millimeters in length and diameter, um, or in length and width. So fairly large, I guess, considering how big a lymph node is. I'm not really too sure, but it had metastasized from my groin to my abdomen and then into what is called your vena cava, which is your main artery that runs into your heart. And this started a whirlwind of things, um, whirlwind of emotions, because it had only been 2 years since the last time that I had it, and that's how she had to start her marriage with me. Was her husband having cancer? So a very horrible time for my wife emotionally and physically, because as I go on telling the story, you'll understand. Physically, she was very taxed with this task of taking care of me. Um, if you've had anybody in your family that's had cancer, it is not an easy thing to deal with. It comes with a lot of sickness, comes with a lot of discomfort, and not just that, but also like the unknown. You don't really know what's going to happen sometimes. So, boom, here we are. And we have to call our insurance company and figure out, like, how am I going to be able to pay for treatment? Um, I made too much money to get coverage anywhere since I already had cancer. On record, no insurance company would actually cover me except for a very high premium. So, without my wife working and me being the only income at the time, and us living kind of paycheck to paycheck as most married couples do when they're first married, it's a kind of a hard road to go on, especially when you're trying to do it more traditionally and allow your wife to stay home and raise your kids in the earlier years of their life. So the only decision that we could make was for me to quit my job and for me to get put on Medicaid and for Medicaid to luckily pay for it, which was an absolute blessing for me. I had to wait a few weeks because in the first quarter, I had already made too much money to get approved. So I actually had to quit my job weeks before I was able to even see another doctor and go receive treatment or even talk to an oncologist about what they were going to do in the first place. So that starts the kind of path of God really bearing down and taking care of us. At that time, I was honestly very relieved, which is crazy to say because most people are like, how could you ever be relieved? And this is not at all a way for me to like boost myself up because I just told you guys I was not a great person. Um, but when I say I was relieved, it was like I finally understood what was wrong with me. That I didn't feel crazy anymore because I knew something was wrong. Um, I it was like a moment of clarity for me, and God really gave me strength in that moment in time because after I had found out I had cancer, I worked for maybe like 1 or 2 weeks. So I was going into work. I had already told everybody, like, look, I'm not going to be able to work while this is going on. So all of my friends at work knew that I had cancer. And I was still coming into work and I wasn't like crying all the time or anything because, like I said, I felt like I finally had the answer. Like, I'm not crazy. Something was wrong with me. I'm going to get it taken care of, hopefully, and I'll be able to stay with my family. Um, and that's exactly what happened, obviously. um, and kind of a quick course of what happened in that time was after I quit my job, I then went in to start my doctor's appointments. As any of you who have had family members who have had cancer would know, like, there are tons of doctor's appointments. They tell you about all this poison that they're going to be giving you to try and keep you alive. Um, and it's honestly awful. There's nothing great about it except for the fact that I'm still sitting here and the family members that I have are still sitting there alive. Those are the only good things about chemotherapy. Um, Everything else is trash. Everything else is terrible. None of it is great. Um, I wish I could say to anybody that's about to endure that it's going to be bearable, but it is hardly bearable. Um, it's a very terrible thing, but it's also something you kind of have to do to be able to live. It's like a catch 22 kind of thing. Um, so we get into our oncology appointments and stuff. Me and my wife are kind of freaking out because we're like, we have rent to pay, we have other bills to pay, we have food that we need to feed our children, feed ourselves. We're gonna have to have gas money to get back and forth to the hospital. And in this time, we actually had a car breakdown. My truck's transmission went out, which is like crazy to think. It's like, oh my goodness. But a blessing immediately came from a friend of mine at work, Travis. Shout out. Um, Him and his wife allowed us to use a car that they had that was extra. And that was for me to be able to get back and forth to chemo because every once in a while my wife did have to stay at home with the kids when I would go get chemo treatments. Not very often, but she did every once in a while. And he allowed us to use the car so that we could have two vehicles. That car is actually my car now because he then let me buy it from him afterwards. So God bless him. I love him so much. And then came a roller coaster ride, mostly up, of blessing. And like I'm talking people from out of state, people I never even met, just learning of the things that I was going through with my family and the fact that my wife had to be home and take care of me while I was here. Um, and my bills were paid. My kids ate better than they did when I was buying them food. Um, our love grew at this house. Our love grew exponentially. Um, our church took care of us. Anytime that we were in need, that need was met. And I've had a lot of like non believers be like, yeah, but those people are the ones who gave you that blessing. But every single time I hear that, I say, you're wrong, buddy. Like, God did that for me. He may have put it in the hearts of men to go and help me, but there were sometimes, man, when I didn't even tell someone I needed something, and I would find the exact thing that I needed in my mailbox. Or come home and we would see a porch full of groceries when we were getting low on food, and nobody would know about that. This is the God of heaven and earth would put it in the hearts of men and women that were around me, that knew I was in need, and they would say, man, I can feel God saying that I need to take this to Justin. And they would. And, eventually along down the lines, like I would talk to them and thank them and let them know that I love them. Not because they gave me stuff, but because they were faithful to what being a Christian truly is, and that is to help a brother or a sister who is in need and to love them as you would love yourself. And if you would not see yourself go hungry, then you should not allow a brother or a sister go hungry or thirsty. And I can tell you right now, it never happened. It never happened. We were never in need. There was never a time in our lives, me and my wife, neither one of us were working. That's what I'm trying to get at right now. Like, zero income was coming into my house other than what was given to us. And, buddy, the church did it. The church did it. Not us. The love of God put it in the hearts of those who were around me to help. What a blessing. What a blessing. And, you know, luckily, I can say that the chemotherapy, it worked. I went through 9 straight weeks um, of what they call a very intrusive regimen of chemo. Um, it was rough, called BEP, bleomycin, etoposide, and platinum, I think is what the P is for. And if anybody knows about chemotherapy, you have what's called like a toxicity level that you can get to, and you can't go past it. So like it causes a lot of fear in the lives of those who are going through it. So I wouldn't like really, really, really encourage you, if you know someone who is dealing with this, pray for them. Or if someone that you know has had it but they don't have it anymore, pray for them, because eventually a doctor can say, there's nothing we can do for you. You know, the toxicity levels that you are under right now, if we continue giving you medicine, it's going to kill you anyways. So pray for those who have had this come into their lives and happen to them. It gives such emotional stress, physical stress as well, because, you know, most cancer patients who go through chemotherapy, they get what's called neuropathy, which is a neurological disease that is very painful and sometimes can last for the rest of your life, which mine so far has continued. And I'm about 2.5 years out now. They say it's supposed to be about a year. But like I said, they said some with a more intrusive form of chemo can make it lifelong. And I didn't even have to do radiation, so praise the Lord for that. You know, I have wonderful, wonderful men and women that I know in my church and outside of my church who had to do chemo and radiation, and not just the people in and out of my church, but also the people that I sat with in those rooms. You know, they had us sitting in pods of 4. So just 4 random people sitting there getting their medicine. And you get to talking to people and you understand, like, you know, these are God's children. These are moms, these are dads, these are sons, these are daughters, these are aunts and uncles of people who really love them. And some of them never get to make it out. So that's why I don't really like talking about this a whole lot, because I met a lot of people in there who don't get to have the same story as me. I never got to ring the bell, if you understand that. And that made me not be very proud of being on the other side. I was very proud to say that Jesus changed me, though. And that is the whole point of this video, is to tell you guys about God's providence in this time. I was a very prideful man beforehand. Did not like taking handouts from people. And God made me comfortable with it, because it was the only way I could live and provide for my family, was to receive grace from those who were around me. It humbled me like crazy, because I had to reach out my hands and be a beggar for a little while. It killed my pride. Thank Jesus for that. And not only my pride, but it also killed my anger, because it showed me what it was like for my wife to be here with the kids all day, every day. And not just be tired because she has a newborn baby. At the time when I was first diagnosed, my son was only 5 months old. She had, you know, postpartum depression. She was dealing with her husband having cancer. And before I had cancer, I didn't really give her the benefit of the doubt, because I was like, you get to stay home. Like, how could you be upset right now? And God showed me, like, hey, buddy, what's it feel like to stay at home all the time? Because you can't go out in the heat because you'll pass out. Because you can't go to the park with your kids because you'll get really tired and have to sit down the whole time and you can't play with them anymore. How's it feel? And God humbled me and showed me my wife is a very strong and passionate person. who needs to have her way as well. And it not always be about me. In that time, God also showed me that I need to lean on my brothers and sisters. If I call myself a Christian, I need to have iron to sharpen myself with. And luckily, within that time, I got invited to a year-long Bible study um, with my senior pastor at my church. It was a men's leadership program. And in this moment, I had to completely just open up and be honest about all the things that were going on in my house and in my life and the things that I was dealing with. And that helped me because confession, to a brother and a sister, and to have one or two in unison in prayer says there Jesus is in the midst of them. And my wife was praying hard for me. And a lot of times I was very resentful because she was asking me to do everything that I didn't want to do sometimes. But then I realized through that moment of time with having cancer, man, she deserves the world. She deserves to be able to get out of the house. She deserves to be able to have time alone. Like, man, she had to baby me for 9 straight months. 9 weeks of chemo, but I had surgery to get a port placed, which then allows you to not lift anything over 5 pounds for like 3 or 4 weeks, up to 6 weeks, depending on the healing process, and then 9 straight weeks of chemo. And then it was another 6 weeks of being down because then I had to recover from 9 straight weeks of chemo, and also I got my port taken out. And you don't really recover from that medicine very quickly. So she dealt with about 9 months of me not being able to do anything and being irritable because I was sick. And yet that queen in there took care of me and loved me and cried with me when I wanted to cry, loved on me when I wanted to be loved on, and showed me that that is what the Bible says a wife should be. God showed me to appreciate her. So in this moment in time, I thought, oh man, poor old me at first. And then realized, wait a second, there's a lesson to be learned here. I had been praying for God to humble me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Like, wow. Your rod and your staff to guide me and your rod to prod me on. And boy, when I was in the valley of the shadow of death, so on, my valley, man, he was there with me. There were moments in time when I would feel him present, like truly right there, like holding on to me and just telling me, like, be strong, Justin. And in that time, going through chemo, there were times where I was able to pray with people. I was able to sing with people. I was able to be a light in that horrible, dark place where a lot of death happens. And God allowed me to be a light to those who I worked with, because those people came out and supported me like crazy. All of my coworkers and my bosses, they loved on me. They made sure that I was taken care of as well. And the endurance that me and my wife were showing, and still being happy with the way the Lord had dealt us, changed the hearts of people that were around me as well. People started asking questions about God. They started asking questions about Jesus. They wanted to know more about him. Like, why are you guys not hating him right now? They wanted to know more. And that to me was a blessing. Like, I actually had told one of my buddies, if having cancer for that long and all the stuff that me and my wife had to endure would have helped just him to come to know Jesus, all of it would have still been worth it. But praise Jesus that he did so much more. He changed my heart. He changed me from the inside out. He made me a much better husband. He made me a much happier dad. He gave me the ability to see it from the other side, see what my wife truly had to deal with. There are multiple times that I would weep for ever choosing to feel like she was against me. Like, that woman did everything but wipe my butt. And that's because I still had a little bit of pride. I couldn't even try and let her do that for me. Oh, man. I praise God for doctors that can take care of us. Praise God for his providence, because he knew exactly what he was doing. You know, me and my wife, like I said, neither one of us worked. And my kids ate so good during that time. They had snacks that they wanted when we never were able to buy them for them at first. They had all the different foods that they liked when I never could have afforded them on my own. And I felt like, to me, that was God saying, don't you know I can take care of them much more than you ever could? And there I was being like, man, I'm doing pretty good about it, like myself, like, and he was like, okay, man, you asked for me to humble you. Let's see how good you can fight this battle for me. Kind of like Job. I'm not comparing myself to Job. Just saying I had a little slice of Job where God was like, have you seen my servant Justin? This boy is constantly a wreck. And the accuser was up there like, Jesus, I'm telling you, I don't know if your blood's going to cover this man. And Jesus was like, I've got a plan for him. He's hard headed. He's a real hard headed boy. I thank my Father in heaven that he didn't give up on me. There's a verse that I have on my screensaver. It says, battles and wars may be lost, but never the battle for your soul. Amen to that. My soul cannot be taken because it belongs to Jesus Christ. And if you're someone who is out there who is struggling, who is feeling like they're not worthy, understand that Jesus died so that you didn't have to feel that way. And the Son of the living God died for you, even you. And that's what I had to say to myself. Like, the creator of heaven and earth died for you, Justin. Why do you act like such a turd? You say you're a Christian. Button it up, buddy. We all need to. I love you guys. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. I just felt like sharing that story with someone to show that having faith that God will take care of you will bring the care upon your life. And that's not just saying, oh, well, I'll believe in Jesus so that he'll give me food and give me water and give me a place to stay. No, it's enduring hardship and still praising him. Enduring change in your life that you're not comfortable with and still praising him. And that is the son and daughter that he chooses to pour out blessings upon them. And it's all based on faith. It's based on trust. And in that time, me and my wife sat down when we figured out I was going to have to quit my job, and we looked at each other and we said, we're just going to trust that God's going to take care of us. And man, he did. He did. And I still thank him today for it. And that was years ago. And he's never stopped. He's never stopped. He has worked miracles constantly in my life. Things that I cannot explain. My wife will just be like, how did this happen? And I'm like, I have no clue. But I do know that we have a Father in heaven who cares for us. And as do you. If you're out there and you're doubting that that is true, understand that Jesus died for the sins of many, not for the sins of only the few. He wants you. It says he sits at the door and he knocks. And whom shall come and open the door to me? He knows your heart. Quit hiding from him. God bless you, and I love you. Amen.